Hello and welcome, everybody. My name is Michael Weiss, coming to you live and virtually in person from Brooklyn, New York. I am with Ai4 Retail. This will be the first year of the Ai4 Retail Conference, which is taking place here in New York on June 24th and 25th. And as part of the conference, we like to do webinars just to keep people engaged, spread the love to folks who can't make it to New York. And without any further ado, I'd like to introduce Kristopher Erickson with the Home Depot. And I'm gonna now kick it to you, Chris, to introduce yourself and jump into the presentation. Thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, thank you, Michael. As he has said, my name's Chris. I work with the Home Depot, everybody's favorite orange box retailer. And we have been using BigQuery here, which is sponsored by Google Cloud, and we really enjoy it. And so what we have done is built a major classifier, major project classifier in BigQuery here. And a little bit about me, though, I'm a Georgia native, so I grew up in Georgia and went to Georgia Tech. I've been working for Home Depot for over 6 years. I like to play X-Wing, but a few years ago I moved out to Portland with my wife and 3 kids. So Quote Center is an application here in Vancouver, Washington, and it's an internal application used by our store associates and enables the large bulk quoting of many big items. Well, I will use the term quote or list, but that's synonymous with baskets and carts and other retailers. So, think about that. How many items can be in a basket? Well, I mean, when you're doing a project, you always seem to come back to Home Depot to buy one more thing, don't you? So our application, it allows our associates to construct complex quotes of sometimes dozens or even hundreds of items. And the associate has the ability to name this list and can duplicate it and resell it. And some of these, as you can see, some of these names here, I pulled these off, are, unless you're in the industry and know the lingo, you don't actually know what this is trying to build just from layman's terms. There's lots of localized terminology and vendor brands. For example, there's sheetrock, but there's drywall, but there's some people call it gypsum. So I needed a better categorization systems of projects for internal analysis and reporting. And I built a simple classifier for our main groups in BigQuery. I had, in the background, I saw a lot of quotes with huge complexity, as I called it, and I just made up a ranking system that I did out of items and vendors and quantity and dollars. And so there were a lot of complex baskets I was seeing. And I hadn't really heard any other retailer talking about really complex baskets. So I started trying to cluster these and figure out what people were doing with these very big baskets. So obviously my first attempt was just to do the normal clustering techniques that you kind of learn. And I did not succeed in many of those. As you can see, some people are doing deck and siding. So, what do you classify that as? I have this little Wally picture here as from Wally here trying to classify a spork as either a spoon or a fork, and he eventually just puts it down in the middle. I feel like that's sometimes a lot of what my clustering approaches have been in the past. Also, Home Depot and other retailers see this too, is they're using the things that they bought a few weeks ago or a few days ago. My wife loves to bake, and obviously she buys a lot of flour, sugar, and eggs. She does not buy those all at the same cart. She kind of buys those as she needs, but she's definitely a baker. So, other retailers can kind of think of that as a classification that this person might be a baker if they purchase lots of flour, eggs, and oil and stuff, but not necessarily in the same basket. Well, I was really enlightened when I went to a conference and heard about eBay and their approach. eBay does, as you know, can sell a large variety of anything, and they have no way to classify what you're trying to sell, but what they do have is this large taxonomy of items, and they're training very smart neural networks, but they're only doing it once they know what the item is. So for example, one of the things they showed was they had a predictor whether it was clothing, whether the clothing was male or female. And that, you know, it's a more simple task than trying to classify this shoe. You know, the next thing they would do is an age, children's or adult, and then they would do a shoe or not a shoe classifier. You know, that's of course glossing over a lot of complexity that they presented. But for example, they're only trying to classify the heel of this shoe only after they know it's a woman's shoe. And I thought that was a really great approach for, you know, classifying anything. Because as you know, at Home Depot, we can build anything and we can give you the tools to build anything. And, you know, really your imagination is this, the things people are building is not the SKUs that they're buying. They're doing something beyond those SKUs. So I found another example here that I really thought was funny. The Not a Hot Dog app. I don't know if you've seen that, but there is a app that tells you if something is a hot dog or not a hot dog. And it's actually pretty accurate. You should try it. But, you know, it's not very useful because obviously what do we do with that then? But, and I have kind of a sandwich alignment chart where, you know, people of all walks can disagree whether a hot dog is a sandwich. I'm sure New Yorkers have lots of opinions about food and what is and what isn't something. So instead of though arguing about things, really all you have to do is measure. So in this 9 block here, you're just measuring whether you're doing, you're measuring the structure from purest to rebel, and you're measuring the ingredients from purest to rebel, and you're letting the items kind of fall where they may. And so here at Quote Center here, I'm not trying to say that this is only a roof. I'm just trying to say how much of a roof is this really? But one of the nice things now is that we are all in BigQuery, and the nice thing about it is that using BigQuery ML, all of the data and all of the modeling and all of the new data is in one place. So me as an analytics professional, I'm doing 0 ETL now, which is huge benefit for my productivity. The models live in BigQuery, the data lives in BigQuery, and the new data lands in BigQuery. So that's saved us a huge amount of time that the models can be called and applied to new data without us having to move anything. The model and the data live together. So I really appreciated that about BigQuery, but you know, data is data, and that everybody knows that it's a little bit messy. So first thing you, of course, have to do in this kind of task is find positive labels. But again, this is all done in BigQuery, and I'm not doing any ETL on this. I'm just making, really just making views and generating these positive labels out of some common terms. And of course, you know, I'm applying the business context here. Where if you're just looking for shingles, you might be missing out on a lot of your positive labels because GAF, which is a major shingle manufacturer, and 3-tab might be terms that the customer or associate would use that would also describe a shingle. So anyway, I made all these positive labels out of many of these keywords using only, again, what's in BigQuery. And as you can see here, BigQuery ML is in beta right now for BigQuery, but they are adding new stuff to it all the time. So this K-means was the recent model that they added to BigQuery. So you can also look at what Google is doing in BigQuery in the future, but we'll gloss over here that it took us actually months of time to move everybody to BigQuery and also build a lot of views that had a lot of features. So we created a number of views on just fact tables like quote facts and customer facts and store facts. And we aggregated a lot of this information and fed it into a training and testing data sets, as you know, in classification. And you can see over here that this is all native SQL. So you can create or replace a model, a data science model here. And this model is a simple logistic regression. I'm trying to predict whether it's a deck, and I have a learning rate here. And you're selecting it from this training view. And so BigQuery ML just enables you to do it all in one place where, if you're familiar with SQL, you can do machine learning and you can save your models in the same place that you save your views or tables, and you can call upon them in the future. And again, like I said, it's very powerful and it's helped us, move on. And of course, what would a model be without knowing what it's trying to do? So the model lives in BigQuery, but Google has enabled you to have a lot of metadata about the model. So for example, you can see, you can evaluate how the model did on the training data set. You can build a confusion matrix of your positive versus negative labels and your true positives and your true negatives. But not to be outdone, Google has a beta UI that enables this all to happen without even calling SQL. They're calling it for you every time you click on the model. So this is the model evaluation for an actual model I was playing around with. And you can see it has the aggregate measures over here, which you would get out of a query. And there's a threshold for positive versus negative labels that you can adjust. And there's a confusion matrix. There's also a ROC curve and precision recall curves. And again, Google had this functionality and then doesn't announce it, and one day I just stumbled upon it and I was like, oh my gosh, I didn't know this was even here in the beta UI, but it's really helped us to communicate what our model is doing and how well it is doing in certain subsets. So props to Google for making this easy. Just, so easy. So as you can see, I have a couple of results here from my roofing model. And here's that job description I talked about, which is manually inputted by our users. And I have the ability to go look in the UI and see what the person had so I can double check my work. But you can see here in the top 5 results, only one of them had the word roof. Other ones were just mnemonics that the associate uses to find that order for their customer. But, you can see over here that even this one was called Winstead for something, but it had shingles, and door and siding sealant. So, they're doing some sort of roof application. But, in this one, there's shingles, ridge vent, flashing, and a few dozen items. So, from my perspective, it actually did do pretty well at flushing up great examples of what I was actually looking for. And that's, again, all done in SQL. None of this involves any moving or ETL, which is a huge burden lifted from most of the applications I've used in the past, where your model lives on your computer and you're trying to get it up somewhere in production, or your model or your data is just really too big for you to bring down to model, so you choose fewer columns or rows or whatever. Okay, so now I have a model, big whoop. If it's not being used, it's not really useful. Tree falls in the forest, doesn't make a sound. If model gives no prediction, is it really a model? So what did I do with this from a business context? Again, this was not always very successful, but I eventually settled on just asking this question a few times to a few different people. If we knew X, or we had a prediction on X, could we do Y? For example, if we knew somebody was doing a house project, could we do something with the price? And I got a definite big note on that, because it doesn't make sense financially, practically, or technically. And those are kind of the categories that I settled into kind of thinking about. If we had this information, could we do something? But does that something even make sense? So after iterating through a few ideas of note, I came to somebody who gave me a maybe, and I said, if we knew this information, could we customize the search experience for the associate? And I got a maybe on that, because we were already interested in customizing the search. And however, the engineer that I talked to said, well, we would first need a way for the application to connect to BigQuery to find that piece of information. So they were able to do that with some endpoints and connections that Google had already had in their Google Cloud platform. So that was actually more easier for the app engineers to integrate too. And again, I'm not really trying to dictate any solutions. I'm letting others supply the creativity for utilizing a prediction. We had already had a ongoing streams of personalization and search, and so we kind of tagged this information onto it. It would be really cool one day if we were able to supply a probability that this, in real time, that this person is doing a something project, and let other teams run with that and base that on their probability. We of course still have a lot of work to do, but be very cool. You know, put a new associate type in wood deck with railing and get a recommendation for a complex item. A complex item being a series of multiple SKUs bringing together to accomplish what the associate is doing. Because even our consumers is kind of a misnomer. They're really do-it-yourself people, and they're also trying to accomplish something. So the idea is, what if we can pre-populate search term lists for associates and let them, and keep them in the loop, but minimize the amount of effort they have to do. So, you know, also what we're currently using this system for is just really to generate more positive labels, which now enables different research options for us. If you have to manually positively label a lot of results, that does get expensive and that does get burdensome, and you know, you're not necessarily more accurate that way either. But this also enables us to just classify additional things. So, and we're able to do clustering in a much better way. Now that I know it's a deck, now I can apply the typical non-supervised clusterings to tease out the subclusters that might exist there, only after I know that they're trying to build a deck. Because like I said, you can come to Home Depot and build almost anything, and that's what we want. It makes it a little harder for us to know what you're trying to accomplish. But, you know, and the only other place I've seen where other retailers are doing this is in the Amazon space. You know, if you look at an Amazon, you search an item, it has a 3-item grouping that they auto-suggest frequently bought together. I did it recently for diapers, and then they had wipes, of course, and they had something else baby related with it, which of course makes a lot of sense. But, you know, I haven't seen how somebody can, or an application where hundreds or even, you know, dozens of items are grouped together automatically. For example, could a grocery retailer auto-generate my wife's shopping list every week based on past purchases and also recipe selection? You know, could I say, hey, generate me a virtual cart with meals for hamburgers, hot dogs, and also salad or something. So there's really a lot of, I think, ground here to research what customers are trying to do with multiple SKUs, and not just suggest the next SKU, but really try to predict the whole SKU. And even outside of a basket, what is the customer trying to accomplish in a single day? That's something else we've kind of researched also, where a single customer comes in maybe multiple times in a Home Depot. I'm sure you guys have done a project and forgotten things. Could we try and prevent that forgotten item by trying to predict what you were doing in the morning? So that's, you know, the hope and the dream, and that's kind of why I'm doing this simple classifier as a start to predicting what sort of complex thing you're doing. Yeah, any questions? Is that too fast?
Great. No, that was great, Chris. Thank you. Yeah, if anyone has a question, you can find the Q&A button down there and fire it off, and we'll get to it now. Yeah, I mean, that would be a crazy future, Chris, if I could come to Home Depot, type in 4 or 5 items, and then you recommend to me the other 40 items.
Yeah, I mean, you as a consumer, you don't necessarily know what you don't know. And,
yeah,
you know, if you're doing a remodel or repair and rip out the drywall, you never know what's behind there. But but maybe past people have ripped out drywall in your area, and this is what they've encountered in the past.
Right. Oh, I see someone raised their hand. Hey, Raul, I saw you raised your hand. You have a question?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. Hi, thanks for this presentation. It's really great. I have a question regarding introducing the customer component, right? Because especially for Home Depot, the things that people buy and the products that they have in mind and on hand differ from people to person, right? So, have you tried introducing the customer component into it to kind of this whole recommendation of the next product or the products that they can buy?
Yeah, I tried introducing the customer component to the whole research. I have a little bit. I haven't driven much into that yet until we have more. We're going to look at the customer a little deeper in the coming segment because we have some customers who are doing the same thing over and over, and those are more obvious to predict, but we have some customers who are doing lots of different things. So we are trying to classify those first before we apply that customer information to this project predictor. Because obviously, if you're a roofer, you're probably doing roofing, but if you're a remodeler, you're probably doing a lot of different things. So once we kind of get those segments nailed down, I think internally, we will revisit that with customer information here. Did that answer your question, Raul?
Yeah, yes, it does. Okay.
Cool. Thanks, Raul. I'm gonna lower your hand now. And any other questions? Ask now, or not even forever. You can get in touch with Chris, but hold your peace for a couple minutes. Oh, whatever. There we go. Cool. Yeah. So Chris, I guess, right. So right now, right, this is really an associate level project. And then the idea will then be, can it be applied to the customer experience directly?
Yeah, I assume it does, but our application is internal, so we don't, other people would have to manage that roadmap. So yeah, it's very obvious, but we would either feed that information to other parts of Home Depot, I think. So, totally. HomeDepot.com would probably be the person we would talk to, I guess.
Right. And then how many associates does Home Depot have to understand like how many people this project reaches?
Oh, so we have total associates, we have about 350,000 to 400. You'll have to look. We're hiring a lot of people in the spring, so that could change. But we have, internally, we have a lot of people at our Pro Desk, and our Pro Desk are the primary users. But we still have several, if not tens of thousands of Pro users internally, yeah.
Got it. That's cool. And then with a feature like this, when you roll it out, is there any like education required for those tens of thousands of Pro Desk people, or is it so intuitive that they just pick it up immediately?
No, I mean, we have an education, we have a Salesforce team that just internally, I guess you could say, visits Home Depots and does educations and communications and stuff. So yeah, we would have a lot of people we would talk to. So we definitely will, keep the humans in the loop, as they say. We will 100% garner feedback from them too. Also, does this make sense? Does this prediction even make any sense? For example, we could sell cement and lumber at the same time, but you got to pour the cement and let it cure first before you purchase the rest of it. So there are a lot of timing issues that kind of the data doesn't show, that you would have to communicate with your associates.
Got it. And then out of curiosity, because sometimes regardless of industry, I'll find that the model builders can be out of touch with like the on the ground people. Was there a process where like you were literally talking, or your team was talking to associates to like understand their workflow and then trying to take that into account when actually, going about?
Yeah, and that's how our application came to be. Was a lot of our associates were communicating to us. And we also collect feedback in numerous ways, not only in person, but they can contact us directly through the application. And like I said, at the very beginning, our associates are making the templates already. So many people are in the stores are giving us that information passively. So we are looking at that. And this is all user generated. So from right now, we are collecting what they are selecting. And we don't have any plans to kind of remove people out of the loop, just suggest search terms right now.
Cool. Yeah, that's cool. So you got to start the process just organically with your associates. They were manually building these lists, and then your team came in. How can we automate this?
Yeah, or just how can we get a grasp right now around what it is? How can we put our hands around this right now, which is really kind of the stage I'm in, is that, okay, here's this bulk thing of data and this multidimensional complex thing. How do we even just chip away at this big hairball of information? So
yeah, well, it seems like you're chipping successfully, so congratulations on that. All right, so I think we can call it. Are there any other final questions, thoughts, things anyone wants to share? Going once, twice, thrice. And I'm Michael Weiss.
Oh, thank you.
Have a great week. Kristopher, thanks so much for joining.
Thanks. Thank you, Michael.
And we'll send around the recording once it's live.
All right.
Have a great week.
All right. Bye.